It being 9 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Stand for the pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty.
Okay, the first thing is to approve the agenda submitted.
Yeah, number 2 on the action item needs to be pulled because it hasn't showed up in the agreement. So Brian asked me to pull that for now.
Okay. Will be an amended agenda. The others,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with that number 2 taken off.
is there a second
Second.
discussion? There being none, all in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Now, approve the previous minutes, August 1st, a week ago. Move.
I'll second them.
Discussion. There being none, all in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Next is public comment. The public comment, that's weird to be. We have no appointments. We move on to consent agenda. We have 2 items on there. Sheriff is here to answer any questions if there be any. Filling 2 spots that are vacated. Correct.
I'll make a motion, you go ahead with the jailer dispatch and hiring.
Is there a second?
No second.
Further discussion?
Are these trained people or people that you have to train?
People with, yeah.
The lead one has some experience?
Correct, yeah.
Okay,
Quite
that's
a experience.
okay,
In the jail.
very good. Any other question, comment?
Thank you.
There being none, all in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Getting on to action items. Consider approving a CUP for Sean Ladsay to build a cabin in Ag District in Winnebago Township. Marty.
It's, Sean Mazay has requested a conditional use permit for a cabin in Winnebago Township. It's an unimproved cabin that will be for storing like outdoor equipment and when he's deer hunting and that kind of type of activity. It's, he will have a little bit of grading work to do. He's going to orientate it so it doesn't have a lot of washing and those kind of issues going on, but that's pretty much it. He does own a little more land in the area. There was initially he came in with, he wanted a conditional use permit to actually put in a dwelling, and then he worked it out with the neighbor. And so the neighbor is going to occupy the rest of the quarter with a new dwelling that will be coming in. The application is in, but we're in the middle of processing that, so that's separate. But other than that, it's basically pretty straightforward. It's a brought-in unit that he's purchasing, and he'll bring that in and place it. I think it came.
It's not permanently attached to the ground.
Right.
Electricity, all the regulations for
Yep.
for a cabin.
It's unimproved would be the right.
Is this the one that was tabled?
Yep.
before?
We tabled with last.
And that was the nuance that what occurred was with the neighbor with this whole concept of the quarter
Yeah,
section.
he didn't want to give up his.
Right.
Yep.
Yep. And then the other party, they basically agreed or they didn't agree, he agreed. They worked it out, so.
I'll make a motion to approve that CUP for King.
Motion is made.
I'll second it.
Further discussion, question? All in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 2 has been pulled. You're gonna be here for 10 minutes. Moving on to discussion items. Start with Craig, I guess.
Well, I won't take long, as all I was a national night out up here in Caledonia. Went to the fundraiser and that's about it. Both had really good turnout.
Mr. Schultz.
I don't have a lot either. We just had our land use meeting. It wasn't much really pressing at that either from us.
Boy, it's a quiet month so far.
Yeah, quiet week.
Mr. Burns.
Well, I'll see if I can change that.
Yeah, you got the community service one for sure. And you
I
got,
went to the National Night Out. That was a good turnout, beautiful night. Sold a lot of food, and they ran out of food and whatnot. The turnout was very, not record setting, but it was a nice turnout. Yesterday or last night, I went to the Hiawatha Valley Mental Health Planning meeting at 3 o'clock, discussing the various facilities that they have and the need. Currently, they have one full-time employee and one half-time employee that takes care of the maintenance of their various facilities between the Sarnia building, the 4 houses that they have, and the apartment complex that they have. And the 1.5 just isn't cutting it. So the debate is whether they should have another halftime. Their halftime guy doesn't want to go full-time. He's real happy at halftime. So should they get another halftime person or contract out more of their services? So they're doing a study on that to see which is more financially feasible. Then the board meeting was held and we had, the biggest thing is finance, of course, and funding, where the money is coming from. One of the things that they've done in the back parking lot, they have a huge parking lot that wasn't being used. So they took out part of the parking lot and turned it into a rain garden, because when it rained really hard, water was coming up on the sidewalk, getting up towards the doors and whatnot. So they put in the rain garden so that all their drainage was going to a specific location. And they added a catch basin to deliberate that. And then they're putting in a very large 37-unit community garden. They've got one on the east side of Winona. They're going to have this one here. They're going to have various sizes of elevated gardens, so they don't have to bend over to do the gardening. It's going to be elevated.
Raised beds.
Raised bed, that's right. And there's going to be anywhere from 4x4 to 4x16.
Ooh.
So there's various sizes, and then there's rent for the sizes. And if your income level, there's variations that you wouldn't have to pay rent if your income is below such and such an amount. And they're getting new cameras put into the building to cover the garden so that they can keep an eye on people that don't go in there and take other people's stuff. But anyways, last night then, after I got done with that, I beat back here and made it to the first child picnic in Gazebo Park. And that was not overly well attended, but fairly well attended. And it was the part I got there for was interesting, but I didn't get there till like 7 o'clock or a little before. But it was interesting and to listen to the ideas and what the plans are as far as moving forward with workforce development and the promotion of Houston County's project. And if we get a good result that we can take to the state, that the state will open up and help, see that this works and help more child care facilitation as far as Houston County and the rest of the state is concerned.
Yeah, it was an appreciation picnic and we checked fire extinguishers for providers, and then there was a meal and it was kind of come and go. It was from 5:30 to 8.
I wasn't there for the fires. I didn't want to with the fire extinguisher. Then after that, we had our community services meeting. Talked to John with regard to who can update, elaborate on what I'm saying. But John gave us a tentative 24 budget, but I want to wait to see the numbers because quite high increase as far as what they're anticipating. So until we see the numbers, we really don't have much to say about that. He did talk about that UCare dental clinic that is going to start on August the 29th is the first one. And the UCare grant came in so that Houston County has no cost to bring these people in for one day. They're trying to get Blue Cross and Blue Shield to partner with UCare so that we can get 2 days a month dental clinic for people within the system so that we're covering people that typically don't get dental care. They're starting with the WIC people as the first group that they're going to deal with, women and children, infants and children. We talked some about the client contact space. We've done the space study and found out that it's way more money than we want to spend to change this building around. But they still need privacy areas so that people aren't telling all their problems out in the waiting room or something. They need privacy. So one of the things I asked is if we could take and move some office space into that conference. It's not used all that often. If we made that office space to move somebody from their location, maybe not related to the Health and Human Services over there, and it'd be a great sized office. It's a big room, but to open up privacy space so they'd have a place to take people with their initial problems that could talk to somebody without it being in a public venue as far as that's concerned. So that was a conversation and to look at something like that. And then Dewey and John talked about shacks. So I'll let you go. And that is all I have.
Wouldn't there be a office space closer by than this one up here?
Well, I wasn't figuring somebody from Health and Human Services go up here, but somebody else's office come up here,
A
Oh,
single
you're gonna
office.
move some.
move somebody up
somebody.
here. Go open up a space that, it's just, it was one thought. Because it's a space that really doesn't get used very much. Just,
It just came out as a thought as we were looking at that co-location things. Okay, Eric.
Well, I had land use meeting too with Bob, and just a quick review of what there was discussion about. Brian gave us a warning on his budget, doesn't look so hot, it's gonna be coming in like a little over $1 million hit on levy, so he's just giving us a warning what it's gonna look like. That's before taking any fund balance out or anything like that, so. Told us to look out. Gave us a heads up before we got shocked.
Was there any, but, and of course, we don't know what the state's gonna do on some of the,
Well, that's because of the state's lowering of their input for, because of the, gas tax and
Sure.
license tax fees. There was some discussion about mobile homes and people come in then wanting to affix their mobile home to their property instead of having it being mobile, so they don't you have to license it through DMV every year. So they needed to, it was discussed that it need to get talked with recorder and the auditor and the assessor to figure out a procedure to help these people, because it sounds like they get sent here and, oh, we can't do that. Well, we get sent here, oh, we can't do that either. So they're sent in circles, and that gets a little frustrating for constituents. So they need to get to sit down and figure out what's what and who can do what. So evidently when you want to fix it to a property that you own, you have to, it's no longer considered mobile, it's going to be considered permanent, and then you have to pull the wheels out, the trailer, the hitch and everything else, and it's
It's untitled then.
Yep, untitled, yep. So. Martin talked about.
1 minute there, you said it's untitled that way?
If you want to make it permanent, it's no longer titled as a mobile home.
Well, mine is a mobile home and I have no wheels on it and I have no hitch and it's all tied down at cement pillars, so how's that going?
Is
Well, I think it's still titled because you can't move it. You can put the wheels back on and move it.
Yeah, I have a
But
title.
but evidently, if a person wants to be able to sell that property, it's gotta be, they wanna sell it as an affixed home, permanent home. Mary explained it all, what this person wanted to do. She wanted, and there's a procedure where you can make it so it's no longer considered mobile, it's affixed. Stays with the property. She had a thing from the DMV where it's, you surrendered your mobility of your mobile home. It's no longer considered mobile.
So does that create a problem? If the mobile home is on there with the wheels and that, you know, all of that? Does that create a problem as far as the one for quarter?
Yeah, but well, if they're gonna make it a residence, or
Comes the
Right,
rest.
the wheels, was it considered one per quarter?
Well, you're talking if it was like a
and she wanted,
family person that has a second dwelling on a farm, or is that what you're referring to? Or
If. Is the mobile home considered a residence even if the wheels hung around?
It should be.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it doesn't change that aspect of it.
It should be, I don't know, it's,
This came up more for the sales of mobile homes, what the problem that they've been having. Someone
Yeah.
who doesn't have a title or a lost title and
They don't
they
get
go in to
transferred.
get a mortgage on this mobile home that they're buying. And now there's no paperwork, so then the bank won't approve the mortgage is how it was presented to us. So then they come in to get this work done and nobody's office seems to be the one to take charge. So it was kind of, they talked about this the last two land meetings.
Not sure where it goes. I mean, what department is it, DMV or is it?
That's where
zoning
they
or
were
is it
gonna,
in,
they were gonna, each department was gonna kind of say what their status was and then try and come up with a plan and who would take lead and
Oh.
take charge of it.
because I did that at my place and my son couldn't come to the house. Because that'd be a permanent.
Right, right.
Correct?
Yep.
So it'd be stupid for me to even think about that.
right,
So
but some
I mean,
people wanna do.
Yeah, but if that's, if they have nobody else, I suppose that's interested in building, it's okay for them. It's wouldn't work good for me. I
well,
mean,
there's a difference between a mobile home and a modular.
Yeah.
Modular is designed to have the wheels taken off and become attached. A mobile home is mobile. So when we start getting into that, then we have a difference in taxation, we have a difference in quarter thing, we got some issues that need to be addressed, like looked at, or be prepared for.
A new can of worms open up.
Also touched a little bit with Martin on the potential development out there in Pine Creek. I had a discussion with because now that we have a new comprehensive land use plan, we need to make sure we adhere to it. And out there, that's at like 22 acres of prime farmland, and it's beyond the 2 mile thing, so. I mean, Sam told me what he said, recommended is to recommend denial and. And if he wants to go pursue rezoning, so be it, but it's gonna be recommended that, you know. We don't approve of that, so,
There's no application filed at this time.
no,
There has been some stuff sold off, but I understand that that's not affected by that 22.
so 2 parcels sold off on, and happened to CUP do that, that part's okay. Just that there's gonna be a meeting coming up to discuss that.
Very good. That's good. Okay. Anything else?
Today we got the referendum vote for the school district in Houston, so just a reminder for that. Luke's been working on the changing of the values at 5% that we lost that appeal, so he's been working on the parcels that are affected by that and getting the changed. So they're pretty busy doing that right now. Other than that, we got the county fair coming up next week, right?
Yeah, week from Thursday.
So it's gonna be a busy time.
And next week is our work group meeting, not a full
So what?
work group, next workshop next Tuesday, our next meeting
For,
for us. Next Tuesday, I was just gonna comment that the next,
That's it.
it's not a business meeting, it's a workshop.
that's a workshop.
Another thing I wanted to bring up for discussion is this, you know, what we've talked about before, this possible, or not possible, but we're gonna, the contract, Winona County contract ends here in September, correct?
In the September.
So are you guys on the committee actually looking at numbers? What it costs to keep that jail running
Yes,
versus closing it?
we're balancing that out right now. We don't have exact numbers, but there's. If we totally close it, I don't wanna have dispatch center, they're gonna look at those numbers. And if we have minimal staff, actually, we're at minimal now, we understand that with these two hirings, we're at a minimum. We have that number, but we don't have the totally closed. So it's gonna be maintenance, you know, even though it's closed, we still have to have air conditioning and
But-
electrical and a holding cell. And
Yeah, there's a lot more to it with the DOC than just closing it, because if someone's arrested, are you gonna contract it out for
That's
all
what I
of
mean.
your,
You gotta-
that's all stuff that Dean and Brian and that are looking at, but it's not something where they're gonna have numbers in a day or two. There's a lot that goes into that.
Right,
plan.
right, but that's all being looked at because.
Correct, they're
you know,
looking at
budget time's
what they're
coming up for
coming to.
next year.
there's discussion, I mean, just trying to give us ideas, because totally right, budget's coming up and what's gonna be changing. And after that contract, so on, so there is discussion.
We still gotta have the dispatchers, correct? And can't change them. I mean, we gotta have so many of them no matter what.
They're at minimum staff right now.
Are
With
we
overtime.
The birds,
Are we obligated with regard to when you mentioned holding cell, so La Crescent, Polka, Livonia, Spring Grove, they arrest somebody, DWI or whatever. We have to provide
That
holding
is,
cells for
that is
them,
the county responsibility, correct?
so that part of it isn't gonna fall. Gotta have,
You gotta have that wherever you're gonna have it.
and now we're gonna transfer them to another facility in another county or keep them here, and those are issues that come up. And of course, we don't know which day of the week you're gonna have the two DWIs come in, yes.
And in order to change the amount of, you know, for, like, say you went to a 24-hour facility or whatnot for a holding, you still have to adhere to the DOC rules on that. And there's different rules on what staffing you have to have there too, which aren't much different from the way Dean explained it to what we're at now, because right now they are at the bare bone minimum. And it's the same amount whether they have the contract with Winona or not. So in essence, once the Winona contract ends, to my understanding, we're still at the bare minimum with what we have for our anywhere from 3 to 5 population that they're holding.
That's the part that bothers me. We only have 3 or 5, right now we have 4.
But you gotta understand, or, you know, that they are at the bare minimum. They definitely could use more. And that's, I think, part of your burnout that's going on. Employees.
so depending on what happens with the jail. Is it a situation where you could have a deputy pulled in off of off the road to be a jailer?
You'd have to look at your union contract, you'd have to look at training, you'd have to look at liabilities. Is that deputy trained to be in the jail? You have a jail incident. I mean, it's not just plugging a body in there, it has to be a qualified body.
So deputy wouldn't have the right qualifications.
I'm not saying that, I'm saying that they would have, they would have to have that training in order to do that, or you would be opening up for someone.
Years bygone, that was kind of how it was done.
Right,
perhaps,
30 years
but
ago, when I worked at the sheriff's office, yeah, we did that all the time, but the standards have changed.
Requirements. Not as easy as it used to be.
No, not at all. Nothing. But yeah, I can't answer what you got there, Eric. Yeah. Dean's looking at all sorts of options. He's got a lot on his plate right now, and he's trying to figure out how to, balance the budget, how to, stay within the DOC guidelines. So there's more coming. We just aren't sure when, but
So
he's working.
is it true that even if we were to go down to a 24-hour holding, because of the design of our jail, we still are at our bare minimum for that even?
If you go to,
Our employee numbers wouldn't change for that?
I can't answer that for sure. I think it would be slightly less, but you still have to have, something in place for a nurse. You have to have something in place for a meal. You have to have something in place for a fair number of employees. And there is a slight difference between a 24-hour holding facility versus a long-term holding, but Dean would be able to explain that better. But it does take staff.
So, yeah, and there's discussion of other bodies coming back in here from other facilities, but that's just in discussion point two of,
Federal contract that
federal
they look at.
holding, people that are pre-sentence and, they're looking at all kinds of options. Answer your question.
So if I get hauled in at night and then I'm sitting there for 24 hours, you have to feed me or do you not have to? Feed me?
They got requirements.
It ain't steak and lobster, but they'll have something.
Oh, there's DOT or DOC Department of Corrections guidelines. They have. It's curious.
So like in a situation, if jail were to be mothballed and somebody in Houston gets to arrest somebody, they'd have to transport them to Winona or whoever we contract with to deal with that.
Right.
If we don't have any.
No.
They approved the holding facility, yeah, you'd have to. A transport would have to be done, and the county, I believe by statute, is required to provide that. So then it would be the county doing the transport.
Right.
Versus the city.
Right.
Or municipality of the arrest.
I don't know, just the fact that our population is so low and you see there's, with cashless bail coming out, more promoting of probation, not holding people, what's the future gonna be here as far as jail population? At what point do you say, we can't, this is sustainable to keep this running?
On the same note too, they said that it could be ups and downs,
The peaks and valleys, we're in the valley right now as far as population. If we have a change in judicial system, that perhaps we would be more on the jailing
But
side.
we don't see that coming. It's still going the other way.
Yeah, no. But there's peaks and valleys you see in some areas.
I mean, they decriminalized some drug use here too, so I mean, that's gonna ease up a little bit too, so.
It's really interesting, our issue, what do we do with an almost empty jail?
We
And
got
you're
to build
looking
new
at some of
ones.
the bigger counties that are building huge big jails. County up by the cities.
They have big population.
But it's
Well, I think,
120 bed jails and stuff, holy. Big population.
well, I think we can be fortunate to say that our crime rate is pretty low here.
Well,
That's a
keep
good
it that
thing. But,
But like I said, I think we're in a valley right now as far as possibilities of incarcerations. I think when things will start to come around and people will realize that sometimes people need to be corrected for 30 days maybe, or 90 days. Or dry out for 90 days, whatever. I mean, That's, who knows? That's the problem. And I guess the question too, several years ago, when the facility was designed and built, things were high, so they planned for maintaining that high, and it changed.
Well, that was, they were, in my opinion, they were misguided by the numbers from DOC and the requirements that they thought that we needed, and, you know. That's why with Fillmore County building theirs, hopefully they looked at all that and questioned some of those projections, because what they said was gonna happen, we needed here is not what we needed. It was overdone.
All right. Yeah, well,
No different than planning for a school.
Right, well,
We overdid that too.
but the thing is that to answer your question, yeah, there's a lot of discussion as to what do we want to do, or what do we need to do to maintain safety, but also maintain accountability in the levy.
well, I just hope we don't close the door on possibility of mothballing it just because we don't want to do that. I think we seriously need to look at that. If, you know, given the population we're at.
Still maintaining a responsibility to the public
Right.
as far as the arrests that are made any given night, be it a fight or DWI or.
We would have to
Some
follow
kind
the
of-
state guidelines. I mean,
They would have to be involved as far as decision and allowing certain things, and would have to have a steadfast plan that they would accept.
Well, I know Wabasha, they were in discussions here. It's probably been 3-4 years ago about closing their jail. I mean, they came real close to considering that. Never did it.
Well, they got the Winona people too, and maybe
Right.
now that they're gonna lose Winona people, it might change their talking again.
You never know, I know it might not be as big enough.
Yeah, the way things are happening up there. Okay. Anything else there?
No,
Okay, I guess I'll just report, we did have our national night out in La Crescent also. We used up almost 600 brats and 400 dogs. I think we had 2 boxes of brats left after 2.5 hours of cooking. That was a big deal there. Bob hit on most of the things about community services. The shack deal in September is over in Wilmer. It's a retreat type of thing with information, and I am contemplating going to it because the one meeting I did, you know, we used to do all of our shack things by Zoom and this and that, you know, and you get some, but you don't get all. And then when I was up at St. Paul for that one here 6-8 weeks ago, a lot of networking and a lot of information, and I got a whole lot more out of it. Perhaps this deal in Wilmer might be able to help us get an idea of what the state's gonna do as far as requirements, but also funding. The main thing is I'm looking at is what are they gonna do with all the plans, and nothing has come down the pipeline. You say, yeah, we're gonna do this for you, but what's the requirements? So I'm looking at that shack deal in the end of September. I've got a couple of meetings here on Thursday that will be Zoom because of the workforce development meeting and Southeast EMS, what's going on. But anyway, I got a couple of Zoom meetings Thursday. That's about it. Reporting that next.
talking,
Yeah, good.
well, talking about Zooming. I brought up at our workshop about the courtrooms being not utilized as far as everything's done online, it seems like a lot of it. 30% only in person, is that, you said you were gonna give it a discussion at your committee?
I stopped and talked to Darlene about it. And they do a lot of Zoom. The attorneys, especially like the public defenders and whatnot, appreciate the Zoom meetings so they don't have to run from wherever their offices are. So that's just, they don't have to come down here, they can do it with Zoom. anybody that is a defendant can request an in-person hearing rather than Zoom. The judge has to approve that, but anybody can request it and have their hearing in person in the courthouse. But right now, everything is kind of still falling back on the COVID way of doing things, and Zoom has become a popular way. And the state dictates that it's okay to do that. They schedule a lot of them. And when I go to the CJCC meetings, the attorneys appreciate having the Zoom. Plus, it saves money because you aren't paying them for their travel.
So attorneys can do Zoom, but judges still Zoom into that or?
The judges, she might be sitting in the courtroom in the chambers.
Right, well, that's what I'm
but
asking.
doing the Zoom. She's still in chambers and still got all the different, the recorder and all that stuff, but just everybody else's.
It's just that, when I brought that up, it was pointed out to me, there's all the other counties have fallen back to the regular way of doing things. Seems like our county is still COVID stuff.
What I'm told, we meet all the state requirements and state specifications, and so saving money is part of the issue, I think. It depends on the case, too. Some cases are more
Well,
egregious,
more-
so they do have a person. The victim can be on Zoom, the attorney can be on Zoom, not the victim, the criminal can be on. The charged person can be on Zoom. That person's attorney can be on Zoom. And then courthouse staff is on Zoom from the courtroom. So somebody from Mabel that had a DWI and can't drive to get here doesn't have to find somebody to drive to get here. And that person's attorney from Winona, let's say, doesn't have to drive down here, so we're saving everybody some money.
I think a lot of them are more evidentiary hearings and stuff like that. It's not like the whole trial is done that way,
True.
to my understanding.
One thing I was gonna ask, I have in my list of appointments coming up on the 22nd of this month. We have a Fillmore and Houston County Public Health joint meeting.
Oh, okay.
I've got that listed, but that sound right?
Be the week after.
Should be.
Be about, yeah, in about a couple of weeks.
20th is Sunday.
Say, commissioners,
Yeah,
Go ahead, John.
I just met with Jessica yesterday with regard to that, and we're looking at making a potential change in that meeting to the 5th of September. I believe it was the 5th. That's a Tuesday, isn't it?
so it is.
5th of September.
So John, I can scratch it off of my 22nd and move it to the 5th, or is that?
Not yet. Not yet. I'll get back to you guys, but we were discussing the possibility of moving it to the 5th of September. And hopefully I'll know in the next day or so, so we can confirm that date.
I had it here too.
Okay.
So John, as long as we got you online here.
Yeah.
You've been having discussions with Sam about, the cannabis part of it, sale and coming up with some
Hope someone will email.
ordinances, working on some more possible ordinances for this new law coming into effect?
Yes, we have. Actually been visiting with Sam and also Marty. And Sam is drafting some stuff. We'll be reaching out to you with some recommendations shortly.
Okay.
How can the Indians be selling it already? I thought nobody was supposed to be able to sell it till
No,
25.
they get the dispensation. The state gave them the right to sell off of reservation land.
Really?
I don't know if you're allowed to bring in what you buy on reservation land off of reservation land.
It's
That's
so,
legal.
why did they get the first dibs on it?
Cause they're a reservation, they don't have to go by state.
Sovereign nation.
All kinds of things happen up there.
Well, something, they said they arrested a guy for selling plants on the corner.
Yeah. They took his plants away. And he says,
Okay.
I've been doing this at the other place, and nobody said anything about that. Shouldn't have said that, because I bet they went to that.
There apparently, there apparently has been a few cases of places trying to sell right away starting in August that were not tribal entities. So I've just noticed that in the news. So as we understand it, you can't legally sell any cannabis, adult use cannabis products until you're licensed, and that licensing apparatus with the state cannabis office, all of that. They're anticipating that that isn't going to be up and operational until potentially the beginning of 2025.
And I found it interesting that when I was at the Hiawatha Valley Mental Health meeting, and they got onto the subject of cannabis and the rules, the policy, the regulations and whatnot. They said that you are able to smoke cannabis in your own home, not any place where your children are subjected to the secondhand smoke. So if you're in your house, the kids can't be in the same room and the smoke can't go to where the kids are.
How are you gonna police that?
That's what I said, how are you gonna go?
Yeah, that's the first I've heard of that.
That's what they said, I have no idea if it's true.
Some of what we're looking at, just, Sam is working on the language, but looking at updating our tobacco use policy, kind of like we did with vaping, so that any smoking or vaping of cannabis products would fall under the same air quality kinds of things we did with the tobacco ordinance that the county has.
So do you know anything about? There was a little glitch, not a glitch, but an oversight, or maybe it was purposeful about minors possessing cannabis, that it's really a petty misdemeanor, that they're trying to take that.
I don't know. That'd be a good question for Sam as to how possession of with a minor would be treated. Whether he'd charge that as a petty misdemeanor, I don't know. I haven't heard that.
Well, I read this in the MinPost website about, there's a little caveat to what they passed in that H-100, and
Mhm.
one of the legislators said, yeah, that was intentional because they're trying to decriminalize it altogether, even for minors. So, I mean, which was kind of astounding, but
That's interesting. I mean,
yeah,
I mean,
I was just wondering if you heard anything about that.
I have not heard anything about that, but a lot of times to try and get my head around this, I think of it in terms of alcohol rules. So, it's still illegal to have minor consumption or any of that. So it would seem that possession of any,
So is minor consumption petty misdemeanor too? It is.
it? Yeah, I don't know that.
You get your
So
petty,
maybe-
your fleet ordinance, your petty misdemeanor, your gross misdemeanor, your felon. And your lower charges are all petty.
I thought it was a misdemeanor.
That's
I
what
mean,
I
Double
thought.
check it, but
Yeah, I thought it was a misdemeanor too, but.
Anyway,
So I didn't quite hear you, Bob, did you say that, that minor consumption of alcohol is a petty misdemeanor?
double check it, but we'd have to look.
So maybe they're trying to bring that into, consistency with alcohol policy. I don't know, but I don't know. I'll look into that, Eric. I've not heard anything as it relates to the minors.
Well, it's everything that law enforcement's gonna have to deal with,
Yeah. Well, and if you have to try and police whether there's a child that gets secondhand smoke in a private residence, I
Impossible.
anything else?
Sorry.
wish I had better answers. We're gonna be
Okay.
learning on this for a while, so.
I don't know.
Yeah. And now we're at public comment again. Looks like nobody on the screen and nobody in the room here. Next is adjournment. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Great, you did all the moving today. Man, you must have a movement.